We will continue with search and indexing, because our page now has a lot of content, like almost half an A4 page, so we surely need something to search it. And luckily for us, there is a built-in search feature in Orchard. But actually, there are multiple features related to it. Let's see. Well, first of all, under the modules, let's search for search. And as you can see, there are multiple search features. There is a simple search, which looks like something we need, but there is also something like an admin content search, and then various other search features as well. And so what gives? The basic search feature is, well, just for the usual front-end side, usable search box. The admin content search is, well, a search box for the admin area. The content picker search is a search box for these content list browsers, but we have seen with the content menu item. And, well, media library search is a search for the media library, which we'll see in a few minutes. Just for now, let's try just search. And spoiler alert, the search feature depends on the indexing feature. So let's try enabling search and see what happens. After the reload, you will see that search was enabled, that's good. And indexing was also enabled, because it was a dependency of search. And jobs queue was enabled as well. Jobs queue is a mythical feature that lives in the background and handles some batch processing. Well, on the question, what does it do and how does it do it, it's the usual answer, don't think about it. Now, indexing was enabled, but we are still not complete. We get a warning, so again, an Orchard style warning, that we need to enable an indexing implementation. Let's stop for a minute and try to understand all of this. Well, first of all, do note that there is something search and something indexing. What are these? Well, search is just the actual search functionality, so the search box and the hit list. Indexing is a feature used by search, and indexing is the feature that actually gathers all the data from the content items and which builds a search index that then is queried by the search feature. And furthermore, we also need some indexing implementation, like Lucene, which is a concrete implementation for index handling. Because the indexing feature itself is just a framework, so to say. Lucene is the actual search index. And this is also an example of how Orchard's modularization works. Because the point of this is that, well, first of all, you can separate and enable or disable these features. For example, you can have indexing without search, or jobs queue without indexing. And secondly, you can swap out pieces. Like in this example, you can have Lucene as the search implementation, which is an open source, widely used indexing implementation. Or you can have another implementation, and you could enable that. But Lucene is the built-in one, so why bother? Let's enable that. So if you search for Lucene, there will be a feature, and we can enable it. Once it's enabled, we get rid of the warning, and finally we can configure search. Under the settings menu, we got two new items, indexes, which should actually be indices, and search. So let's take a look at both of these. Let's take a look at indexes. Well, first we need to create a search index. A search index is, well, a container, let's say that, which contains all the items that were processed by the indexing engine. And this search index is then queried by the search implementation. So we need at least one. We can have multiple search indices to be able to to store only selected content items in various indices. So for example, we could have an index just for blog posts or just for pages. The point being that when searching this index or querying that index, the content items are already kind of pre-filtered. So we can have a search box just for blog posts or a search box just for users. In the simplest case, however, we create a search index, a single search index, which we can call search. And the good thing is that if we call it search, then some good defaults will be configured in the background. As you can see, this index doesn't have any documents yet, but it soon will. If we take a look at the content definition, and for example, look at pages, we will see that here we also have a new item called search index. So actually what you can do is that for each of the content types you can select in which index they are indexed in and which version of them is indexed. So at the moment we only have one search index, so one search index called search, and this is only listed here. And by default, for the index called search, only the published versions will be indexed. This is usually what you want, but you can also select not indexed if you don't want the specific content type to be indexed, and thus searchable. While this index is building, let's take a look at the search settings as well. The search settings is about all the configuration for the actual interactions with the index. That means search. We can specify the default search index to use, but for each search box we will also be able to define which index to use. And we can also define which titles to search for, which fields to search for. Because what is indexed is actually all the fields. So content parts and content fields can make searchable fields available. That means that they can tell the indexing engine that my content is this string, please index that. And as it happens, the title and the body parts both have such implementations. And actually, well, the whole title and the whole body, the content of the title and the body will be indexed in the search index. And by default, these are also searchable, so we allow users to query on those. And by the way, we could also narrow the search to the current culture, but we don't need that. So I've hit save, and now let's take a look at the indexes menu again. And as you can see, we have two documents in the search index. That seems about right because basically only pages are indexed right now. Well, then probably there should be actually just one. Well, let's take a look at whether blog posts are indexed, and maybe they should be. And yes, blog posts are also indexed in the search index, and since we have only one blog post, well, that is indexed as well. But we could also go to students and index students too. So you see, for students, by default, not indexed is selected, so we can select published version. Hit save. And now if you go back to indexes, well, we still have 2 documents, but shortly we should have 5. While this runs in the background, because indexing runs as a background service in Orchard, let's create a search box. Now, it won't come as a surprise to you that for this we use widgets. So we will actually add a search widget. Let's go to widgets. And let's add the search widget to the featured zone this time. So I'm going here, the usual way, and now we have a search form widget. This is new. Let's call it search. As you can see, a lot of brainstorming went into these names. And let's save it. By now we should have more documents in the index. And that's right, now we have 5 documents in the index. So all the students, all the pages, and all the blog posts are in the index. Let's go to the front end and see whether our search box works. Well, it's here, displayed, so that's good. And now let's search for something. Well, one of the students' name was Jane Doe, so let's search for Jane. And there is one result, which is Jane Doe, so it seems to be working. Let's search for something else, like orchard. And indeed, the only page containing, or the only content item containing the word orchard comes up, which is the default homepage. So it seems that, well, indexing is working. And we have configured search for that as well. We have enabled Lucene as the built-in search implementation, indexing implementation. And it seems that we have a search box within minutes.